Hi everyone, this is Donna. Welcome back to my channel. Today I will be creating a Halloween card using the Spooks and Spells stamp by Whimsy Stamps. This is a newly released stamp and it features 5 Halloween themed images and some pretty funny and quirky sentiments. I'm going to start my card by stamping out all of the images, although I don't use all of them for my card. I'm stamping on some Nina Siller White 80-pound cardstock using Memento Tuxedo Black ink because they're both Copic friendly. And I'll go ahead and stamp out the images twice just to get a nice crisp outline. And then I'm going to grab my Copic markers to color in the images. I am going to speed this part up of the video quite a bit, but I will have all of the caps on screen most of the time. Otherwise, I will have a blog post link down below where you could see some of the close-up pictures as well as the color combinations that I've used for all of the images that I colored. For this little bat, I'm using some neutral gray markers to color him in, and I've started by adding N9 just in the shadow areas. Then I came in and blended that out with an N7, just going over that dark area several times until I have a good blend. And then I have N5, and again, I'm just going over that same area until I get a little bit further into the image. And the two darkest, I guess 3 darkest, I'm really adding a small amount of, and I reserve most of the image for my highlight. So then here I have N3, and I've added a little bit more of that than the previous 2 markers or 3 markers I've added. And then finally, I'm going to finish off coloring this image with N1, blending out any harsh lines that may have been left behind. For his little face and body, I use the exact same markers and I color him exactly as I did the wings. I left a lot of the image for the highlight and just a little bit in the dark shade. For that happy little cauldron, I'm using the same blend as I did the bat, and I've started by adding N9 just in the small amount to add some shadows. Then I've blended that out with N7, and then I'm using N5 here, and I am coming out a little bit further into the image than the previous 2. And then I'm grabbed N3 and blended out a little bit more what I would consider my mid-tone. And finally, I'm going to finish off the image with using my 2 lightest shades. This time I am using an N1 and an N0 to blend that out. For the little handles and the feet of this cauldron, I'm using E15 as the darkest shade. And I'm adding just a little bit in the corners. And then I blend that out with YR14. And lighten everything up with YR15 to give it a golden look. The potion, I'm coloring the typical green, starting by laying down my YG00. And then my darkest shade I'm using for this blend is YG05. I've just added it right at the outer edges of the potion, and then I came in and blended that out with the YG03. And finally finished everything off with a YG00. The bubbles, I'm just using YG00 and YG11 to kind of give it a slightish green tint with some see-through, I guess. Anyway, I'll finish off the images by adding some highlights and then using my Scan and Cut to cut those images out. For the background, I have a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just going to do a little bit of ink blending, or I guess a lot of ink blending because I cover the entire thing. I'm starting with Blueprint Sketch just at the top of the panel. I am using my blender brush to apply that about an inch or so down. Then I'm going to add Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink, and the best way I found to blend two colors together that are somewhat apart in intensity is to add that color a little bit lower where the two colors don't connect, or in other words, leave just a little white space in between them. And then I can come back over where the two colors meet and blend them out using a little bit of both inks until I get a smooth transition between the two. It does take several times of going back and forth between the colors, but eventually I do get a relatively smooth transition. Here you can see I already did the blue, and then I'm coming back over the area with purple. And then next I'm gonna add in Spice Marmalade Distress Oxide ink to finish the ink blend on this panel. You do want to be careful when you're mixing colors like purple and orange, because they tend to take on a brown look. But I'm applying the orange at the bottom and not quite coming up all the way to the purple until I get as close as I possibly can. And then I'll blend the two colors together using minimal crossover so that a little bit of the brown I got is just not that noticeable. Here I'm just blending out that line by kind of going just straight up and down, and then I'll take the tip of my purple brush here and just ever so slightly come across that line just to blend it out. Now off screen I do go over this panel a second time following the exact same color and pattern. And then I'll come in a little bit on the edges with black soot just to make it look a little more Halloween-y. I'll go ahead and spritz the panel with a little bit of water and blot it dry with a paper towel just to create some texture. And since this is a Halloween card, I thought there's no way I can't add my black splatters. So I'm adding some that are, I'm using diluted acrylic black paint and a paintbrush to splatter the panel. Once my panel was completely dry, I used the Peekaboo Window No. 1 die set by Whimsy Stamps to die cut the panel, and then I'll pop out those inner pieces and save those. I do use those a little bit later in the video. I have added a piece of black cardstock to an A2 sized top folding white card base, and I also have that frame popped up on some foam tape. I can remove all of the adhesive backing and center that panel to my card base. The die cut panel does cut down slightly smaller. I think it's about 4 by 5 1/4. So a little bit of that black cardstock just peeks out the outer edges. And then I'm going to grab those squares that have die cut from that panel and adhere those back in just using liquid adhesive. I'm not adding any foam tape to the back of those. I'm just directly adhering them to the black card base, so they kind of pop in. I do decide to leave the circles as black, and then I did stamp out the sentiment onto a piece of black cardstock and white heat embossed it, and then I've popped up a couple of the edges and adhered it to the center of the card. And all there was left to do to finish off this card is add my images, which I did pop up on some foam squares before placing them on the card base. I do finish this card off by adding a little bit of sparkle using a Spectrum Noir glitter overlay pen to both of the images. That will do it for this card. If you are new here, please consider subscribing to my channel and hitting the notification bell to be notified the next time a video is uploaded. I want to thank you for stopping by and watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I will have a list of all of the supplies I used for this card in the video description area, as well as on my blog, which I've linked down below. Thanks again for stopping by today, and I'll see you next time.